Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Thank you. I think that's my favorite part of the whole evening.
That's quite a welcome.
How did it feel?
Good. I feel pleased.
At Startup Grind, one of the things that we do different from a lot of the other interviews is we want to go way back to in your childhood and talk about, are there particular things you remember when you were a child? What were you like? Were you a leader? Were there lessons you learned? What were things like in your early days?
I was a tomboy. I was the only girl in a family of boys. I was really naughty. I was in the principal's office a lot. I was not a calm child. I was very busy. So I had horses. I was in 4-H. I had all the rabbits and chickens and horses and knitting and cooking, and I just wanted to do it all. I was very busy. And I was probably somewhat entrepreneurial. We lived on the river, so we had an old canoe. It didn't even have a paddle. We had just an old board that we used, and we would dive in and get golf balls because we were across the river from Indian Hills Golf Course. And then we would have barrels of them, and then we would sell them to the golfers. Or if they knocked their ball in, we'd wait and dive in and get it and take them their golf ball. So
What was that first taste of business like?
it was very good. We get 35 cents sometimes. And, oh gosh, I sold Girl Scout cookies door to door. I sold vegetables out of my parents' garden, pulled it in a wagon door to door. Had the old Kool-Aid stand on the front lot.
What was your favorite business in your whole life?
In my whole life or as a child?
Your whole life.
Oh, well, probably now. I'm retired. That works for me.
Cool. So then throughout your years, you were building more and more significant businesses?
Well, not so much building businesses. I had got married, had children, and then I went back to work, and I was in data processing. I worked at a little company, and then I went to work for the state of Michigan, and I was there about 20 years. And I don't know if it's there anymore, but there was a glass ceiling, and it was low. So many of the men I worked with were promoted, and I wasn't. And I heard the supervisor, I asked for promotion, and they said, oh, she won't leave. And I had 5 moving trucks by that time parked in my mom's backyard, and so I quit. And I've been there 20 years, and I had 5 or 6 weeks vacation. I was making $40,000 a year then, and that was in the early 80s. That was pretty good money for a woman then. Yeah.
What did that feel like back then to hear those comments and to see other people being promoted?
Oh, it's hurtful. It makes you so mad that I quit. But when I quit, oh my gosh, my mother said, you're going to lose everything you have. And people said, oh, they were making fun of me behind my back because of that stupid moving company. But
What did you think when they were making fun of you? Did you feel like I have to prove that I'm right? Or did you feel nervous, maybe they're right?
I was a little nervous. And you know, we see when people come to us to franchise, it's that little thing in the pit of your stomach that you can't quite make that move. Sometimes people will come and talk to us for maybe a year before they'll actually do something. And what they call it, analysis paralysis.
So speaking of analysis paralysis, so you were in data processing and you're a good analyst. So when you went to build 2 Men in a Truck, you did a market analysis and you put together all kinds of spreadsheets and pro formas and business plans, and that's how you built the company?
Well, in a way I did. At one time we had, it was either 57 or 87 different reports that I made. It was like I couldn't stop. I loved it. But I don't know, I didn't have a marketing background, but I just loved having that business. It was a little tiny business, but if you do an ad or you do something, to me it was like an old radio. You turn this and all of a sudden you could see the business start spiking up.
But how did it start right at the beginning? How did it start? What was the impetus?
Well, my 2 boys were in high school. My husband left. I was a single mom. and he left a pickup truck behind. So they would use that pickup truck to move people. In the town courier in Okemos, we put the first line in the ad was 2 men in a truck. And they were hardly men, and it wasn't a moving truck, but they would move people, and they did a pretty good job. People kept calling, and I would come home at noon from my job downtown in Lansing and check my answering machine, and one day there were like 12 calls that people had called for the boys. But they were teenagers, and if they wanted to go to a party or something, they'd call people and say, someone stole our truck. So I think they did a few lawn jobs too. But
So it sounds like it was a somewhat challenging time in your life where you were a single mother and you're busy because you had a full-time job, you had probably a mortgage and kids to support and things like that.
yeah, it was. It was an exciting time though. Once that business started, that's all I could think about. And you think, oh, I'm going to have a business, I'm going to have to work long hours. It sounds so hard that you can't do it, but if you have a business you love, you don't care what long hours you work. You will just work and work. And if you're working from home, I'd be working in my nightgown at 3 in the morning. And then later when I got an office, which was we were talking about a few minutes ago, it was a little old house on Michigan Avenue. We had 2 rooms upstairs. And I would probably leave there every night at 10 or 11 o'clock at night. And that's what I did, long hours.
So it sounds like your work energized you, and so that gave you, I think a lot of times entrepreneurs or people who have an entrepreneurial mindset, they think, oh, I've got a good job and I just can't make time to start the business. What do you say to people like that? Do you think that they haven't found the right business, or do you think that, what do you think?
Well, apparently they don't love it enough, but I just loved what I did. So you've got to, if you want to have a business, I think you've got to start it in some way. You can't. People have ideas, but that's not a start. You have to do something to start it.
So that'd be your advice to the people out in the audience who are thinking about starting a business, just go do it, just go do something?
Well, you can't study it too long. I don't know what kind of business you're thinking about, but you've got to get started and do something. It's hard. I mean, when are you going to give up your day job that supports you? That's a hard decision to make. I had a little deferred comp put aside, but I lived a pretty stringent life for a long time. You know that pot of coffee you make and you drink it all week? That kind of thing.
So it sounded like when you, it sounded like you're not going to get a promotion, and that gave you like the fire to say like, okay, I'm done, I'm quitting. When you heard that they said you're not going to leave, what did that feel like the first day that you didn't have your state job anymore?
Oh, it felt wonderful. It was wonderful. I still remember it. The movers had broken a piece of marble, which is very easy to break. It's like a piece of marble is like a stick of butter. I mean, you have to be careful how you carry it because it's so heavy it'll break. So I had to go to Genesee Marble Company, Granite Company in Flint. And I'm driving down the road, and I know everyone else is sitting in the office. And I was working, but I was out on the highway doing my thing, so it felt great.
And I think sometimes there's going to be a honeymoon period when you start your company. Everything is great. How did it feel like 3 months later?
It still felt good, but we had our troubles. I wasn't licensed, and I tried to find out about a license, but I couldn't really find out, so we just took off and moved people without a license. And one day the state police ran our truck off the road, and they wanted to know where our license was. Well, we didn't have one, so I told the movers, by that time I'd hired two movers, Joe and Elmer, and I took a soup can and I drew a circle on the map, and I went, don't go outside of this circle. We'll just work in this circle. And then one day, the state police came to my apartment, and they wanted to go through all my moving sheets. And it was a lady, and I always remember she had blue eyeshadow on, so I thought, well, no one with eyeshadow could hurt me. She's a lady, and I'm a lady. And so I invited her in. I let her go through all my paperwork, and she wrote up 3 7 misdemeanors or something that we had gone outside of that circle. So I had to go to court. I was so scared. And the judge went, "What is this about?" He said, "What is it?" So the moving laws are easier now than they were back then. They were written in 1933, so they were old.
Was that one of your biggest challenges early on, was dealing with the regulatory compliance?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it was. And that, and then it used to be if you had a moving company, then you had to get a license, and then you couldn't get a license. The state and the other movers would try and stop you. So we tried to change those laws, and I had to testify in front of the Senate at the Capitol, a committee. I was so scared. And I went to Flint and testified, and I was so shy and so scared to get up there and testify. And I was testifying against the unions, and was one person against kind of some mean people. So I was like, it was scary.
So when I was young, I used to think $1 million was like infinite money. And I used to think if I had $1 million, wow, I could just do anything. When you started your business, when you left your state job, what was the scope? Did you have any ideas of where your company would be 10 or 20 years?
I never thought beyond anything, just helping getting the men there to work and getting the customers moved. And I think we've been in business for a few years. The first week we made $10,000 in 1 week. I could not believe it. That's nothing now. But
You think some entrepreneurs get caught up where they think, if I start this company 10 years from now, I'm going to sell it for $10 million. I'm going to have a big mansion and a house, and that they're focused on the wrong things versus, sounds like you were just focused on the day-to-day and delivering and doing a good service for your customers?
that's right. I don't know. I'm not someone that cares that much about all those big things, really. It was really important to me. We created a business that could give back to the community and also create a lot of jobs for people, good jobs. And through franchising, we've created a lot of franchisees that have a real good life.
So before we move on from this early period, I want to know, I think in your first year, I think I read that you gave 100% of your profit to charity. And I know for myself as a business owner, it can be really hard, to manage cash flow, and there are so many things you can do with it. And I know for me, it's not top of mind to give it all away. What was your thinking there?
Well, it was only $1,000, and we started in May, so that was my profit at the end of the year. But our whole family always did a lot of volunteer work and a lot of things for the community. So it felt so good for me just to be able to sit down. I wrote 10 checks to local charities for $100. That was an awful lot for a single mom to do, but it empowered me. God, I felt so good, and I realized when you have a business, you can really help a lot of people. You can do a lot of good.
That's awesome. That's really cool, and I know that you've continued that giving mentality.
Our company does a lot.
What were some of the really great things that happened at Two Minute Truck? Were there any happenstances, just surprise, out of the blue? This was an awesome thing that happened.
It just seemed to grow. It didn't grow like in big spurts. It went really slow, but we had so much fun. We had a baseball team here in Lansing, one of the few baseball teams. I think there were only 5 or 8 teams in that league. We had picnics, and it was just going to work every day, the buzz that's going on in that little office. And it was just regular work, probably like you all have, but it just got big.
And then were there any disasters? I know one of my friends, he had a disaster one time. Somebody had hacked into his computer system and put out a press release that tanked a stock, and so the FBI was in his office the next day.
Well, I think we've had some disasters. Everyone had sent me that YouTube thing of the truck, our truck running under the bridge, cutting it off. And we did go under the Pennsylvania Street Bridge, lost a truck there. We took the drive-through off the Hot Now.
What's it like for you as the owner when you destroy a bridge?
Well, it destroyed our truck, not the bridge. But I remember going to that hot and alcohol. Some young guy owned it. He came out. He went, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I thought he would like sue me, but he didn't. He just, I went, I don't know. Nothing happened. But way back when I started, we had just started, and this lady called me and she said, your movers unplugged my freezer when they moved it, and they didn't plug it back in, and all the food in my freezer is spoiled, and I'm going to sue you for $800. And oh my gosh, I was so upset. I called my brother and I went, I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't afford this. And he said, Mary Ellen, just sell that stupid business. And then I got really mad at my brother because he said that. I loved that business, so.
When you're early on like that and you have so many pressures on your cash, how do you decide where to deploy it?
Well, I never had any accounting, so I kept a shoebox under my desk, and I wrote on it the ins and the outs. That's what I called it. And if we had any money, then I'd spend it whatever we needed. And we found that every May we would buy one new truck, and then then we'd be ramped up for the summer, and that would be good. Well, then as we got bigger, we had an accountant, and guess what? He wanted a budget. So it kind of made me mad, because up until then, I could always just spend whatever I want. So then we had to have the budget.
And how do you think about those things when you can buy a truck, or you can hire somebody, or you can hire a marketing company, or all kinds of different, there's a million things you can spend your money on. How do you know where the best place to put those dollars to work?
I don't know how I knew, because I didn't have any background in that at all. So we just, probably whoever came along and had a spiel about I should do this or that, I go, oh, okay, I'll do that. I know one time we took advertising out on WILS, I think it was. And they wrote some ads for us, and it was, this old lady said, what, you called 2 hens and a duck? And her son went, no, 2 men in a truck. And that ad cost us so much, and then a bunch of people were offended by it because it was like, this is not working. But we started out, we thought great big telephone book ads were the answer. Of course, now that's gone by the wayside. But we found out our best ad was just our trucks, which didn't cost anything, billboards. So
it sounds like maybe you would try a lot of things. Somebody would give you a spiel, and you'd say, okay, I'll try that, and then do more of what worked and less of what didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever thought about selling your company?
No, I've never thought about it. I'm sure my kids think about it.
They didn't know all the work that went into it, huh?
Yeah. Well, all 3 of my children are very involved in the company, and they've worked really hard on it. So, I mean, they have a legitimate reason that they could think of selling it, but they love running it, and they do a really good job. So we'll see someday. Who knows what's going to happen.
And to back up a little bit, you talked about, I just lost my train of thought. You talked about, buying a truck every May, I think it was. Did I read that the first time you went to buy a truck, you were worried that they wouldn't sell you a truck?
They wanted to know where my husband was to sign the papers. They want a man to sign the papers. So, but I did get a truck. You probably heard that. The first truck I bought cost $350. It was such a beater. It was awful. And but that's how we started, and that's all the money I had. By some miracle, I had saved $350. We still have my bank book, and my son's got it. You can see where I took out all my money.
How did that feel when that guy wouldn't sell you the truck without your husband there?
Well, it made me nervous because back then, got a woman to start a business. It was scary.
What would you give to advice? How would you advise people out in the audience that are scared about something like that, where they're?
Go ahead. In the beginning, well, I just went ahead. There were a lot of things I did I probably shouldn't have done, just like moving people where we weren't supposed to, doing all this. I thought, I'm going to do this until someone stops me, and then call an attorney.
As you built out your business, did you ever think about expanding into other areas of business or diversification?
When I first started out, I was so excited about that business that I was thinking about it today. I got the registration for a business called The Other Man, and it was supposed to be like a handyman service. And then I was thinking about starting something that would be like computer, like the Geeks, before the Geeks. And the attorney that helped me franchise, he went, just focus on one thing. So you kind of need to choose what your business will be and focus on that. Put all your energy there.
How did you decide to franchise Two Men in a Truck?
Well, a lot of people said I should franchise, and they would just say it in passing, you should franchise that company. So this friend of mine taught franchising at LCC, and John Dodge, I don't know if any of you knew him, he had a restaurant here in town. So I had an appointment with him, and I went to his restaurant, and he got me a cup of coffee, and we sat down at a table, and I said, well, I'd like to franchise Two Men in a Truck. And he said, well, you don't have anything to franchise. You can't franchise that. And I sat there, and I stared at that cup of coffee, and I thought, I wonder if I'm supposed to pay for this coffee, or... But he became a really close friend of mine later, and we used to laugh about, it was kind of embarrassed about it, but we used to laugh about that.
I think it's unusual for entrepreneurs to think about franchising. I know that I don't think about, when I'm building a business, should I franchise this? Do you think more entrepreneurs should think about building their business as a franchise?
Oh my gosh, it's a great way to expand your business. I met this girl who'd franchised, what's the dog? I can't. Huh? It's not doggy daycare, but something else here in town. She franchised it, and I was on a panel, and I met her, Becky Brevitz, and she said, oh, you should franchise your company. I talked to her out in the hall after the panel, and she said, I have a franchise attorney. Go talk to him. So I went and talked to him, and I didn't really know anything about franchising. He said, well, you have to write this book and do all this stuff, and my kids were very leery of him. And he said, you have to change the name from Two Men in a Truck. He said, you should call it like Ajax Movers, or then you'll be in the phone book, at the front of the phone book. So my kids didn't trust him at all. But I did sign an agreement to franchise, and I still didn't even really know what I was doing. He would kind of tell me what to do, but back then, there were no books like you have now. He's the only person, what he knew was all I had, so I had to listen to everything he said, and slowly it did start working. But what a way to expand your business. But when you have a franchise business, it's a totally different. I have the moving company, and we have the franchise company. They're totally separate and totally different. And it's a huge job, but it was worth it.
It was quite an investment, too, to make in that, right?
Well, I took the money from the moves and gave it to the attorney. So some people called me that were knowledgeable about franchising. They said, you can't do that. You'll need $25,000, $50,000 at least, but I didn't. I just did it little by little. So
You talked a couple times about gaps in knowledge that you had, but you've built this huge company, so you clearly knew the right things. What do you think are the most important things for entrepreneurs to know?
You know what? I have do you want to hear my list?
Sure.
I have this bookmark I made, and I have 10 lessons that I learned being in business. And I made all these bookmarks, and I was going to hand them out when I spoke to people, and then I was too bashful to hand them out. But
You're still bashful today?
No, I'm not. I am kind of bashful. Well, the first thing I learned is you can do public speaking if you have to do it enough. I was so shy when I started that people call me Pinky. And if you talk to me, I'd just look at my feet, and my face would get real pink, and I couldn't talk to anybody. The second thing is always give back to your community. It's so important just from your heart. I mean, if you have a business, to me, and that's how our company operates, we give 10 cents from every move to the American Cancer Society. It doesn't sound like very much, but been tens of thousands of dollars over the years has accumulated from that. The customer always comes first. No matter what happened, we would get our customers moved. I know when I worked at the state, I was at the Christmas party, and I got a call from the mover. The truck broke down, and one of the movers ran off. I came from my Christmas party in my high heels and my party dress, and at midnight that night, I was still carrying boxes from that truck to the customer's house. We got the truck going, and that customer was so mad, he just stood there. I was going up and down the ramp in 3-inch heels. You've got to get the job done, no matter what. Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah. These are good.
Okay. Love what you do. Life is not a dress rehearsal. So it's so fun to own a business if you like what you're doing, but if it's not something you don't like, I wouldn't waste your time doing that. Don't listen to negative comments. When I was going to quit my state job, and all the time through the startup of this, so many people, said, don't do it. Go back to work, stay at work. Why are you doing this? And it just hurts you. Just stay away from people that have negative things about your dream. I see people, I think they are doing the craziest thing, but I would never say anything to them because you never know. You just never know. Even if you're broke in your business, let people know that you will pay them. Even if you can only pay $1 a week or whatever, talk to them and tell them that you will pay them back. At one point in our business, several of our franchisees banded together, and they said they were not going to pay royalties anymore, but they were still going to use our name. And we had no money. We didn't know what to do. So my daughter looked in Detroit. There was a franchise company, franchise attorneys, and she went down there, and she had all this paperwork that we were being sued. And she asked to see Mr. May. It was May, Simpson, and Strode was the name of the law firm. And she chose Mr. May. She figured he would be the most important person because his name was first. It was this real old man. She went and she said, he was sitting at his desk with his hands. She said, Mommy looked like Abraham Lincoln sitting there. And she showed him all the paperwork. We were going to get sued. She said, we need an attorney and we don't have any money. The next Monday morning, he sent their best attorney here to Lansing to help us. And we couldn't pay them. It took years to pay. And we won every one of those lawsuits. But when you win a lawsuit, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the money from the people. I mean, we ran up huge legal bills and got no money back. But we did pay them back. It took years. Always say yes to any opportunity. You just never will know where it will take you. When I was so shy and people would call and say, would you come speak here or there? I would go, I would love to. And I'm looking forward to it so much, even though I was really nervous about it. A good example is I spoke at the National Guard had a camp up north, and they asked me to come up and talk about entrepreneurism. So I went up there and spoke, and I went up a couple times. And then they asked me if I'd be on their board. And I was the first woman to be on their board with the National Guard. And then they started taking me all over the world with them. It was like, I've been to Bosnia and Norway and everywhere with them. And what an opportunity. What if when they called and asked me to speak that first time, I had said no? So that worked out good. Don't lose your focus. I mentioned that before. Do what you love and focus on it, and don't spread yourself too thin. I think it's exciting to be in business sometimes, and you start thinking, why gosh, I could do this and this. It makes you powerful, feel very powerful and energetic when your business starts taking off. After I went to the Capitol, the Senate contacted me, and they wanted me to run for the Senate. And I went down to the Capitol. I was so nervous, and they said, oh, you can run your own business and still be a senator. And so I called my daughter, and I went, well, I'm going to be in politics now. What was I thinking? And I said, would you come here and run this company? Well, she was a pharmaceutical rep, and she was just in her 20s. She was making $85,000 a year. She had a company car, and she quit all of it. And I said, oh, well, I can't pay you anything. I don't have any money. But she came anyway. And my kids all came to work for me, but we just squeaked by. So I start out to be in politics, and I'm supposed to go to all these events, and they call my daughter. They said, your mom's hair is, it was like, I called it boat hair. It was like blonde. It stuck out. They went, she can't have hair like that. And she's got to drive an American car, and she's got to have different clothes. And after a couple of months, I went, I don't like doing this anymore. So I wasn't even to the primary yet. So then I decided not to do it. And they were like freaking out. They said, well, we have to find someone else to run for the Senate seat here. So they said, you stay, you like disappear until we find someone. So I would drive to Detroit and go to antique shows. I was just like, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Disappear. They did find another lady to run. So that was my trip with politics. So stay focused. Take a lot of pictures. We have videos that we make and different pictures. And when you start out in business, you think every day is boring and you think those pictures aren't important, but someday they will mean so much to you, and it will bring back such good memories. I think the other thing is, the 10th thing is that just if you want to do something bad enough, just start doing it. Start working on it. At least do one thing every day for your business. And so when you look back sometime, you'll be surprised what you've accomplished. Even a little thing, cleaning out a file drawer, planting flowers in front of your office. Make sure you do something every day. That's my great advice.
Those are some great tips. So
Pretty simple.
I want to touch back on a couple of things you said there. One, it sounded like you said that the customer is always first. Sometimes the saying is the customer is always right, but it sounds like you made it intentional that it's first, not right.
Well, I think it is right. I mean, you're not going to argue with a customer. You want to smooth things out and try to make it right. It's hard in our business. Damages are part of moving. I mean, you're going to damage some things, and so we just fix them. We don't argue. They had a law here that was any damage a mover did, you paid 6 cents a pound. Is the old law. It was crazy. I mean, if we break your stuff, we fix it. Why argue about it? We did it. So.
Another thing I wanted to ask about in that list, you talked about saying yes to any opportunity, but you also talked about focus. How do you balance those two?
Well, that does sound like it would be the opposite, doesn't it? But I mean, focus on your main business. So if an opportunity could be people calling and asking you to come speak about your business, try and do it within that realm.
So you say yes to everything, but within that focused realm.
Well, use some common sense, I guess you'd say.
And so it sounds like you get a lot of energy from your business. Were there any times where it was sapping energy from you?
Not really. When I was young, I was very energetic. I'm not anymore, but I was. So if you love what you're doing enough, it gives you energy. Did you ask all your questions?
No, I've got.
He can just keep going.
We can be here all night. But I wanted to ask about, if you look back at your career, it's been amazingly successful. If you were to mentor yourself going through it, what things would you change, or what advice would you give yourself?
That's a hard one. I don't know. Just keep going. I think even the mistakes I made were a blessing to me, because later when we franchised, because I knew how to help people not make those mistakes, I can't think of a really incident of something that I would advise someone, but I know when I first started, the chamber has SCORE, where the older business people can advise you. And all these older men came and they were looking at my books and everything, and they went, "Sweetie," they said, "you don't charge enough." And I didn't. But I think that's one thing women do. I think they're kind of afraid to charge a lot for what they do.
Yeah, I think pricing can be very difficult. I think maybe for women in particular, but I know I struggle with that myself. How do you know what the right amount is to charge where you don't feel like you're stealing from these people?
Yeah.
Or a lot of times you're dealing with small businesses and they don't have a lot of money either.
I know. My heart goes out. If I get a free coupon somewhere, I could never use it. I could never do that to a business. But
Do you have any advice in that arena for how people should think through pricing?
not really. Everything is different. When we move people, they only move about every 5 years, so it's not like pricing of something that is weekly or monthly or. No, I don't really. You can look and see what other people charge. Is that illegal? I think. I don't know.
You've been featured in quite a few books like Women Entrepreneurs Only, The Girl's Guide to Building a $1 Million Business, Millionaire Women. What advice do you have for women in the audience who want to start or have recently started their businesses?
It's just the same things I just said right there. I didn't have this wonderful knowledge. I just worked really hard. I was nice to people. It's easier than you think, but you have to stick with it and do something every day to work on your business.
That sounds like persistence.
Yes.
and gradually doing something every day.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there are any special challenges that women face that men don't, or any advice that you give different to a male entrepreneur from a female entrepreneur?
I don't. I was kind of being in moving and trucking. It was intimidating, and especially like when our truck got pushed off the road and things like that. It was very intimidating. But all I ever thought about was our customer. I tried not to think about our competitors. I put it out of my mind. I wouldn't waste my time thinking about them. So.
I think another thing that entrepreneurs struggle with, especially in Lansing, I myself have a family, and I know a lot of my friends who have businesses have families. How do you balance, when you're so in love with your business and that's what you're thinking about all the time, how do you balance that with your family?
Well, it was easy for me, but hard for a lot of people. My children, I was single, and my children were almost grown, so I didn't have little children. So in a way, that was easier for me. But working with your family, it's a double-edged sword. It is, it is wonderful to be with your family all the time, but it can be very emotional if you disagree. Boy, I had a box of Kleenex on my desk for a long time, and we went through a lot of boxes of Kleenex. That part is hard.
Do you recommend people hire family members?
Only if they are good enough to do the job. I wouldn't hire them just because they're family at all. I'm very lucky. All three of my kids are very business-oriented. So.
And a lot of founders have partners. And there's almost, in some circles, they say that's the number one thing you need to do. What do you think about that advice?
Well, I heard if you have a partner, and what we do with our franchisees that come in with a partner, it should never be 50-50. It should be 49-51 or something like that. But so right from the get-go, they're probably scrambling over who's going to get that 51 part. I wouldn't have wanted a partner, really. But it was funny, after the business, a lot of people laughed at me. And then after it got going, guys would come up and say, if you want a partner, let me know. It's like, oh, okay.
What's the most stressful experience you've ever had?
Probably when I had to go testify for the moving industry. So, at the Capitol, I was shaking like a leaf. You know how you see someone speak and they're at a podium and their legs are going.
How did you handle that situation? Leading up to it was probably stressful. During it was probably stressful.
You just have to do it. You have to do it. There are things for your own personal life that maybe you wouldn't do, but when you have a business and people depend on you, you have to do it. There's no backing out of it.
On a happier note, what's the best thing about starting a company?
Seeing all the people that are successful from that company. A few years ago, we had our annual meeting in Dallas, and I met a friend for dinner at the hotel where we were staying. And when we walked out, there were all these young guys. They were leaning on the bar, having a beer, talking, laughing. Hi, Miriam. Hi, Miriam. I went out in the lobby, and I said, did you see those young guys? And she said, yeah. I said, they're all millionaires. And they were. And they started as movers for us, many of them. Went up, driver, trainer, finally got their own franchise, and are very, very successful now. So things like that, that makes you feel really good. The things that you can help people in your community makes you feel really good.
That's awesome, making dreams come true like that.
We see it a lot.
We are going to open it up for audience questions and answers. Do we have a mic, Nick? Cool. Are we going to do a line? What do we do? Are we going to do a line? You're going to pass it around? Let's do a line over here. Yeah, let's get somebody going, and then let's do a line over here on the right side. Here, Melissa. So anybody who wants to ask a question, just come right up over here.
Right here. All right. Can I ask 2 questions? Is that okay? So my first question is, a lot of time women are asked or assumed that there are a lot of disadvantages to being a woman in business. What is an advantage to being a woman in business? Fair enough. My second question is, so you were talking about you were at the state and you had a good job at the state and you were supporting your kids, and then there came a point where you left your job at the state and it was just the business supporting you. Did you have a moment that you had to just level with yourself and have a keep going moment instead of going back to, did you ever have a time that things were really hard and it looked like the golden thing to go back to where you were before, where it was comfortable? Did you have anything like that?
I never thought of going back. Even when you mention it right now, I go, wow, I never thought of that. No.
Dave, pass her your mic.
Oh.
Is it still on?
A question that I have is that why do people choose you as a franchise versus somebody else? What makes you so different?
I don't know if it's our values or just because someone's interested in our, can you hear me? Interested in a franchise doesn't really mean that we will choose them. You're going into a long-term agreement. So they come to our office, they meet with all the directors. They spend a whole day there while we're just trying to decide if we will have a franchise. But it's not, it's a people business, totally a people business. They don't need any background. Actually, someone with a moving background doesn't really mean anything to us.
Hi, I think you're incredibly inspiring.
Well,
And my
thank you.
daughter's here, and it's just fabulous to hear it's just awesome. So my question is, when there's a point where you are in growth mode, yet finances are not quite there, and how, when you're in that black hole for a while, how do you bridge it, or what advice do you have when you've tapped family, friends, venture people, your 401k, all your monies, and you still need to bridge a gap?
I don't know how I did it. I mean, when I started, I didn't even have an office. People thought I was talking to them from a corporate office. I was either in my apartment or I bought, the first year when I left my job, I bought a houseboat for $5,000. And I stayed on it all summer. And I would stand on top of that houseboat. Remember how big the cell phones were? And I would whack that thing, and then I would call people, and they thought I was in a corporate office. You get by. I've heard in franchising, I've heard this, the first 25 franchises, is like holding a pipe, a hose, and the money goes from the franchisee to the attorneys. And it's kind of like that. We just scrape by. The best, I don't have any real answer. How did I do it? I don't know. It's kind of surprising.
Thank you.
We just scrape by.
Yeah. Hello, Mary Ellen. My name is Jakeem. Super nervous. But I really appreciate everything that you've done and the chance to meet you and the words of wisdom and the advice, particularly staying focused. Because I have a lot of ideas. I'm an entrepreneur. And my business partner, you may know him, Joseph, Island Phil. Anyway, he hears my ideas, and what my question to you is, when you have basically your business or your child that you want to develop and grow, and you want to maybe have another one, and somebody's saying, well, just stay focused and concentrate on the main issues and goals at hand. Is there a time to let this other idea go or develop it, or just stay focused on the one? And when making that executive decision, do you involve other people, or just let it go to the wayside?
I had to just let it go by the wayside. I did have an attorney then. He was not he helped me get going, but he was not an expensive attorney. And we worked together on this, but when I got all these other ideas, he went, don't do that. Just do what you're doing, I would have been spread too thin. I was in our office, before my daughter came, we had 36 franchises, and I was the only person there, except I had one lady that would come help me do some filing. I ran the moving company in Lansing. I did all our books. I planted flowers out in front. I put Easter candy all over on Easter for them. I had their picnic. I had 36 franchises, and I did that all by myself until she came. So I had to stay focused. I couldn't have been doing anything else.
Thank you.
Hmm?
Thanks so much for the talk. I really appreciate it. When you were first getting started and your name was relatively unknown, what do you think it's a weird way to phrase it. What's the most effective way to do customer outreach, like nuts and bolts? Like and I know times have changed, but was it word of mouth? Did you put something in the paper? What technically did you do to just let people know you existed?
Well, our trucks were a big help because they didn't cost anything. It's a moving billboard all around town.
But I'm talking early, it's cool you have your own trucks and you got a fleet of them now, but embryo stage,
Yeah,
we got a business
truck.
now, okay, how do people know about this?
Well, I only had one truck, but it was out there. Another thing was to join the chamber. I joined the chamber, and when you join the chamber, you have to get out there, just like you're doing tonight, with your business cards, probably the chamber or any kind of organization like this. Get out and meet people. Some people will go to something like that, but they're kind of afraid to talk to anybody, and they'll stand in the corner. And you can't do that.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Hello.
Hi.
I was just curious, what roles, right when your children started helping you out, what roles did they play? What was their actual positions?
Well, my daughter came aboard when I was going to run for the Senate, so I thought I was leaving, but I didn't. And at the same time, I asked my son to come from Grand Rapids and run the Lansing company. So for a long time, I was 100% owner of the company, and my daughter ran the company for 14 years. She did a wonderful job.
And then one day she just said to her brother, I'm just so tired. I'd like to spend time with my kids. Will you take over? And he said, yeah. So he took over. He grew the company once again. He grew it bigger. So they all have their specialty that they do. And they all have a different style. My daughter was very caring and loving to people. And we had a 6-week sabbatical. If you worked for us 6 years, you got 6 weeks off, paid vacation. You could do anything you want. That was not your vacation. That was a sabbatical on top of your vacation. Things like that. Everyone wanted to come work for us. Well, then my son took over. A lot of people lost their jobs. The sabbatical was gone. He took over right during 2007, 8, 9 when the economy went down. He had to cut way back, and it was hard. I mean, he felt really bad, all the things he had to do to make our company more streamlined. But we've come out of it really good, and he's still in charge. And I look up to him very much. So, and my daughter, and my young boy.
Thanks. Hi, thank you so much for everything that you've shared. A lot of us here, I think, are just sole or entrepreneurs, so by ourselves. What do you have for advice in terms of instilling your passion into those first few employees that you bring on, whether they're interns or, just sharing your vision and making sure that they can follow through with upholding what you've worked for?
Well, one thing I found out was important that I didn't know for a long time is to be as transparent as you can about what you're doing. When we'd had the moving company for a while and I had people in the office, a lot of people just think, well, she pays for their trucks and then she keeps all the rest of the money. They didn't really understand all the expenses that were involved. And I think if you're really open and work together, so they're part of it and it's not a mystery, I think that helps.
I love your motto, and I was wondering how you came up with it about treat every customer as though they were your grandmother. And then also, how did you get advertising in movies?
Oh, well, the grandma, if you ever come to our office, we have like a 10 or 12-foot etching of a little old lady with a bun on her head, and it says we run our company by the grandma rule. That's my mom. And she was so cute. She helped me all the time in the beginning. We kept the trucks at her house. She would watch out the window. She would call me at work if the movers were late. She was a big help to us. So it was so wonderful that we could honor her. Even she's gone now, but and that's our grandma rules, my mom. Our items in the movies, it's called product placement. I'm not sure, Cindy's here with me, I'm not sure how much we pay for that now. It used to be $25,000 a year, and they take some of your items and they're in a big warehouse. So when they make a movie, they go through these warehouses and they choose what items they're going to use. And so you will see our things in a lot of movies, our boxes. We took a truck all the way to California. Somebody drove it all the way out there for a movie, and then it was the wrong shade of white, or it was too shiny or something. So,
how do you deal with the human resources department? As far as how much of a chance do you give people, and is it a gut decision when you hire people? They may look great on paper, but sometimes I'm sure you get the feeling of what they're all about, possibly. And how did you handle hiring, firing, and those issues?
Well, you have to realize I'm retired, and I've been gone a long time. So we have a lot of employees now, but I was not there when they were there. So my employees, where they come from, my first employee was my son's babysitter, and she had some spare time. The people that came to us were just people, a boy that worked with my boys on their first job. He became our manager. They were just people I knew. And but I don't know an HR department. We have a big one, but I don't really know how they operate. It was amazing to me when we first franchised. A franchisee would have 2 men and a truck, and he would go out in some city and start his business. The first time I heard of our franchisee having an HR department, I thought, whoa, that's not us. That was our franchisees, and they do have all that now, but I don't have that knowledge. Hell, everything you ask me, I don't know. You probably wonder why I am here.
Cool. Well, Mary Ellen, before we end things, I got one question for you. One more question. What do you want to be remembered for?
I think I would like people to think she lived her life to the fullest. I feel like I've lived several lives.
Cool. Well, thank you. Everyone help me